Hello, this is Courtney with Love Lives On, and today I'm going to be talking to Jay Miller. He's the founder of Voice and Speech, which is a public speaking and voice coaching service based here in Toronto. Thank you so much, Jay, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So a lot of our viewers have been wondering what they can do to improve their public speaking skills during preparation for delivering a eulogy. So the first question they have is, what is the most common mistake that people make when they're not used to public speaking, and how can they be avoided?
First thing that comes to my mind is the speaker is unprepared and under-rehearsed. So get to work on that speech as soon as you find out that you have to do it. Get your notes prepared as quickly as possible and allow yourself time to run through the speech out loud several times before you have to deliver it. Another very common mistake I see is that speakers are trying to use notes that actually get in their way, that hinder them rather than support their performance. So they're using notes that are actually better for reading rather than for speaking. So make sure you're using at least 14-point fonts or larger, and make sure that there's plenty of white space on the page, that the text isn't squished together too much. Third thing, most people aren't giving themselves enough time. They're not taking their time when they speak. So they're putting pressure on themselves as a speaker, and that creates a lot of anxiety and nervousness. And then the other thing that I would say is that they're being too reserved. They're working with a level of voice and a level of energy that's appropriate for private conversation and not for public speech. So you need to be speaking in a way that feels like a bit more than what would be natural for your everyday conversation.
Another question that's commonly asked is how people can prepare beforehand when they've been asked to deliver a eulogy.
Right. So to take off on what I said earlier, start your preparation right away. As soon as you're asked to do the eulogy, get started. Don't wait till the night before to start pulling your notes together or writing your speech. You need time to rehearse. So the sooner you get the speech ready, and the more time you have for rehearsal, the better. So to then move on with the rehearsal part, you have to practice doing exactly what you'll be doing when you give the eulogy. So reading over your speech, sitting on your couch is not rehearsal. You have to get on your feet and practice going through it out loud. This is what seems like a pretty obvious part of preparation that really gets overlooked. But when you stop and think about it, no car company would introduce a new model of car without putting it through extensive testing, right? The same way with speaking. Why would you want your first time through the speech to be the one that's in front of the listeners? So leave as much time for rehearsal as you possibly can. And you'll be aware of what parts of the speech will come really easily and what parts are going to have to be a little more on your toes. Another thing that you should do is time the speech. I'm assuming that most people are given a time frame for their eulogy. If you don't rehearse the speech, you have no idea how much time it's going to take. And I promise you that what looks like the right amount of time on a piece of paper can easily go longer. And so if you're going over time, it's a sure sign you haven't prepared and haven't rehearsed. And I think, not to be too blunt about it, but it shows disrespect for the organizers and for the audience if you go over time. So make sure you time the speech, and again, this happens in rehearsal, edit it until you know it's going to be the right amount of time.
And what are things that people can do 5 to 10 minutes before they go up to the pulpit or the rostrum in order to mentally prepare themselves and calm their nerves?
Okay. Let me back that up just a little bit. Do something that's going to get your breath going, something that's going to engage your voice fully and get your voice warmed up. If you don't know how to warm up, get online, YouTube has plenty of vocal warm-ups that a person could do. So get yourself warmed up ahead of time. The next thing that I would suggest is that you arrive early enough at the place where it's going to be held so that you have a chance to see the space that you're going to be speaking in.
Absolutely.
And even better, actually get behind the podium and get used to how that room looks from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give yourself a chance to check out the lighting over the podium or the pulpit. I can remember one time I gave a speech where I rehearsed during the day, but the event was at night, and the lighting over the lectern was so dim I might as well have had a candle to read my notes.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be caught in a situation like that.
That's
So
true.
get familiar with how much lighting there will be, and just as important, if you can, test out the mic ahead of time. So you're not shocked by the sound of your voice over the sound system. Find out if the mic needs to be adjusted before you speak. Does it need to be pointed right at your mouth, or does it not matter? If it needs to be adjusted, learn how to adjust the mic with a minimum amount of fuss.
Yes.
Because I hate seeing people get up there and they make a half-hearted attempt at adjusting the mic, and then it's still not right, and so they give their speech like this. You know, take care of all that ahead of time. You're going to feel so much better, and things are going to flow a lot more smoothly.
Yeah, and those are so many things that I know that I would never even think of that are so important.
Right. It takes a little bit, you know, it takes time beforehand, but allow time for that. That's part of your preparation. Then, as you're sitting there waiting to go to the front of the room and actually give the eulogy, I think the most important thing I can say is be focused.
And are there any techniques that people can use to stay composed when they're delivering a eulogy?
Right. Okay. The first thing I want to say is that the person who is most composed is not necessarily the most effective speaker.
Yes.
And especially at a eulogy, right? We would expect to see some feeling. So if there's a bit of teariness, or if the voice quivers a little bit, no one's going to jump up and throw things at you. Now that might even be a bit appropriate.
Yeah.
However, having said that, we don't want you to be a mess.
Yeah.
Right? So again, I sound like a broken record, but rehearsal plays a part in this. Because it's in rehearsal that you start to process the feelings that are attached to what you're going to say.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting it to sound good or getting all the words in the right order.
Yeah.
It's in rehearsal that you can give yourself permission to feel the sadness, feel the loss, feel the bittersweet moments that you might be talking about, maybe even the gratitude or the humor that you'll be talking about. Give yourself permission to feel that every time you rehearse, so that when you get up in front of your audience, you've already been through that. So it's not smacking you out of the blue.
Yeah.
That will really help. In fact, you might be surprised at how little you feel when you actually give the eulogy. That's not a bad sign. The emotion is still there. It's just that you've already worked through it in your rehearsal.
Yeah.
Another thing that you could do is just to feel both feet on the ground. I know that sounds kind of simple, and what does that have to do with staying composed? But when you are aware of having both feet on the ground, it tends to keep you in your body. It tends to keep you in the room, present, and not sort of being off somewhere with your feelings or sort of swept away by the emotions. So stay grounded. And the other thing that I would suggest is that if emotion does come up, and it's likely that it might, just let it flow. Just give it away as you speak. Do not try to ignore it or to control it or put a lid on it. I guarantee you, emotion is stronger than you are.
Yeah.
So when emotion needs to move, so let it flow. Just imagine it moving with your speech, moving with your voice. And what you'll find is it's sort of like a wave. It goes through you and then it passes by. But if you clamp down on it and try to prevent yourself from feeling it, you'll actually be stuck in that emotion, and it will overpower you, and it can really mess up your performance.
And what should someone do if he or she loses their place or their train of thought when they're delivering a eulogy?
Right. Well, the first thought that comes to my mind is that if you lose your place, your notes are too dense.
Yeah.
If you lose your train of thought, you don't have enough notes in front of you. Having said that, if it happens, just pause and find your place. No one is standing there with a stick to wrap your knuckles or a stopwatch saying, oh my God, they stopped talking. Actually, those kinds of pauses are really good in a speech. So if it happens, just breathe, take your time, and find your place. Let me just show you a little strategy that I advise some of my speakers to adopt, especially when you're working for a text that's pretty much word for word. Most people have it written down in paragraph form, and that's really easy to lose your place. And then, since you can feel how easy it is, you keep your eyes glued to your notes, and then there's no eye contact, and you have no audience connection. So when you're working with that kind of text, I encourage people to format their notes 14-point font or larger, 12 points probably borderline or too small. Put 3 to 4 lines at the top of the page, 3 to 4 lines at the middle of the page, and 3 to 4 lines at the bottom of the page. That way you never lose your place.
That's all
you always know you're either at the top, at the middle, or at the bottom. So I think that's a really effective way. You're going to go to the front of the room with more pages than you would normally have. But I think that handicap is way over, what should I say, is nothing compared to the handicap of losing your place.
Absolutely. So you mentioned making eye contact. So is eye contact really important in public speaking? And if it is, then why?
At the risk of stating the obvious, public speaking, effective public speaking, is all about a relationship. It's about a conversation. It's about making a connection with your listeners. So making eye contact is the most basic thing you can do to start that relationship, to establish that connection. So, I am not in favor of advice that says, look just at the top of people's heads, or look at the back wall just above the last row. That is not making a connection with your listeners. Eye contact has to be real. So if you're afraid that making eye contact with certain people will bring up too much feeling for you, there are plenty of other people in the room that you can make eye contact with.
Do you have any final thoughts that you can share with our viewers to help them when they're preparing to deliver a eulogy?
Two things come to mind that I think it's helpful to remember. One is, it's not about you. Yes, you're at the front of the room, everyone's watching and listening to you, you're the one doing the speaking, but ultimately it's not about you. It's about the deceased, the family, the experience of the people gathered there. You're there to serve them. You're there to give a gift. You're there to facilitate an experience. So you have a job to do. If you're up front thinking people are counting how many mistakes I make, or they're judging me in some way, you go into defensive mode and you can't communicate well from that place. But if you're there, always remembering, I've got a job to do, get this message to those people as effectively as I can, then you stay in giving mode. And that is so much more conducive to an effective eulogy. Related to that, remember that perfection is not what you're aiming for here. I mean, I've never given the perfect speech. There are always mistakes. You're not aiming for perfection, you're aiming for authenticity.
Absolutely.
If you can show up and let us see who you are, be sincere, and speak from the heart, we're not going to care about the mistakes that you make, and you're not going to care about the mistakes that you make, because it's about something bigger than that. So it's not about you, it's about your listeners, and it's not about perfection, it's about authenticity.
Excellent. That's a great mindset. Thank you again, Jay, for taking the time to meet with us today. Your expert advice is fantastic for our viewers, and we really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, Courtney.
Thank you.
This is Courtney from Love Lives On. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more on how we can celebrate our lives now and forever.